So good morning, everyone. We've put on a very, very warm day here in Canberra for you all. I'm usually finding that I'm apologising for the weather, and I think today I might just take this one as a win, especially if our air conditioning works indoors well. And on behalf of the Australian National University, welcome to the 2025 ANU Migration Update, hosted by our Migration Hub. And I'd like to acknowledge a number of distinguished guests, not least the Honourable Matt Thistlethwaite, MP, Assistant Minister for Immigration and Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade. A big welcome to you. We know later this morning we'll have the Honourable Julian Hill, MP, Assistant Minister for Citizenship, Customs and Multicultural Affairs, and Assistant Minister for International Education. And Mr Michael Willard, welcome to you, Deputy Secretary of Home Affairs, and also a big welcome to senior representatives from the Australian Treasury, Department of Home Affairs, the UK Home Office, higher education sector, and leaders from across our community, government, diplomatic agencies and international organisations. And I understand that we have somewhere between 200 and 300 people online today as well. So your presence reflects the complexity of migration and the commitment across sectors to understanding it and shaping better outcomes. Migration, as we know, is a defining feature of human history. It drives innovation, it strengthens economies and enriches societies. But of course, there are many challenges. There's tensions, there's profound human consequences from migration. Globally, population movement is not just an economic trend. It's a humanitarian, it's an environmental, and it's a geopolitical and a deeply social issue. For Australia, migration is actually central to who we are. More than half our population is a first or second generation migrant. And when I was thinking about this speech a couple of nights ago, I hadn't actually thought about my own children being intersectional first-generation migrants as half Chinese children, and their father was not born here in Australia. And I've never actually thought about my own family having been coming from a long line of white Australians for 5 generations myself. So migration underpins our economy, skills, diplomacy, and regional ties. It shapes our cultural life and our future prosperity. Governing migration is complex, certainly requires data, long-term thinking, collaboration, and a clear-eyed commitment to separating fact from misinformation. Too often, public debates are shaped by distortion rather than evidence, and we like to think at ANU we make a big contribution to that issue. This is why the ANU Migration Hub exists. As Australia's national university, our mission is to understand Australia and its place in the world, and few issues speak to that mission as clearly as migration. The Hub brings together more than 100 experts across 5 colleges, spanning demography, economics, law, political science, sociology, public health, anthropology, data science, history, and more. It connects this expertise to government, to industry, NGOs, and our international partners, with some of you are joining us for this event. It is one of the most interdisciplinary and practiced, engaged migration research communities in the world. We're very proud of it, and it's the largest of this scale in our region. Its mission is simple but essential: to build and safeguard the knowledge Australia needs to understand population movement, how it shapes us, how it has formed our national story, and how evidence can guide the decisions we make about the country we are becoming. The Hub's impact is clear. Its members brief government, contribute to reviews, inform national debates, and advise international bodies. Its research, from labour mobility and Pacific migration to integration, social cohesion and population modelling. It's shaping how Australia plans, how we plan for the future. The migration update has become a key fixture on the policy calendar, and we believe that's another hallmark of the hub and its ability to convene. Migration is not just a challenge any one group can solve, and strong partnerships such as those here make the difference. This update brings together senior public servants, scholars, ministerial representatives and experts from the UK, Canada, Asia and the Pacific. Today's program covers global migration trends, Australia's place in the world, emerging data and tools, immigration outcomes and the intersection of mobility and climate in the Asia Pacific. These interconnected issues require integrated thinking, and that is the hub's strength. Tomorrow, the hub and the ANU Futures Hub at the National Security College will host a Migration Futures workshop with leaders from government, industry, civil society and academia to explore solutions for supporting Australia's long-term prosperity. As Interim Vice-Chancellor, I'm proud of the leadership ANU is demonstrating because migration touches almost every part of our university. The hub has transformed decades of ANU expertise into a coordinated, visible capability that Australia can rely on at a time when global systems are under strain, climate-driven movement is rising, and public debate too often drifts from evidence. To begin day one, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, the Honourable Matt Thistlethwaite, MP, Assistant Minister for Immigration and Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade. Minister Thistlethwaite brings deep experience across migration, multicultural affairs and community leadership, of course. His portfolio sits at the intersection of migration, diplomacy, labour markets and regional engagement, so it's pretty complex. Minister, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your leadership at this pivotal moment, and please join me in welcoming Assistant Minister Matt Thistlethwaite.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are on Ngunnawal and Ngambri land and thank Paul for welcoming us to country. We're all migrants to this beautiful country if we're not First Nations Australians, and I think that we owe a debt of gratitude to Paul and his ancestors for teaching and explaining to us how to thrive and survive on this very, very rugged continent, and that's something that we should be very, very proud of, the oldest continuous culture in the world right here in Australia. I also want to acknowledge and thank Professor Alan Gamlin, Bob and the team. I've had plenty of cause to call on Alan and Bob and others in this role to seek their advice and expertise on migration policy. And I can tell you that this organisation is very well respected within the Albanese government. We value the work that you do in providing facts and evidence in assisting with us in formulating policies, but also in guiding the Australian public around how the migration system works, the importance of migration for our nation's economy and our society, and how we can continue to get it right into the future. So this is a very, very important annual gathering that brings together experts like yourselves to come and discuss policy and future directions and how you can assist government in shaping the debate around migration in Australia. As you know, migration is often a contentious issue. It becomes particularly contentious when we have economic pressures, and obviously at the moment Australians are feeling the pressure of an overheated housing market. Cost of living pressures associated with household living have increased, energy prices have increased. It seems to take us longer to get to work in the mornings or to pick up kids in traffic, and that can lead to people trying to blame migrants for those issues, unjustifiably and unfairly. And that's why having conferences such as this and policy decisions and settings that are based on facts and evidence and rigorous analysis is really, really important. And Our government is working to ensure that we provide confidence in the Australian migration system, but that the settings that we put in place are based on those facts and that evidence and can provide that confidence for the Australian people. So we've been focusing on trying to get the migration system right, on ensuring that it's tailored to the needs of our nation. And one of the first things that we did when we were elected was to appoint Martin Parkinson to review Australia's migration system. And he made a series of recommendations along with Christine Nixon on integrity issues about how to fix the migration system. And on the back of that, we developed the migration strategy. And basically our focus as a government has been on delivering those elements of that migration strategy. And the theme of your update this year is not only timely, but it's also a bit of a call to action. Migration for a more productive future. He's asking all of us, members of parliament, scholars, policymakers and practitioners, to explore how migration policy can contribute to national productivity, innovation and prosperity in the decades ahead. Since 1945, more than 6 million migrants have chosen to make Australia their home. And each of them has, in their own unique way, contributed to our cities, to our regions and towns. They're our relatives, neighbours, friends, work colleagues, acquaintances, industry and business leaders, corporate and small business owners, workers. Good, hard-working people who've helped shape our cultural, social, civic and economic life. And I find that many of those migrants are so appreciative of the opportunity to live in Australia that they grasp that opportunity and they work very, very hard and contribute to our nation's character and ensure that we have a cohesion and a multiculturalism that we can be proud of. In my electorate of Kingsford Smith in southeast Sydney, was one of the first areas that post-World War I and II migrants settled. People from Greek, Italian, Chinese backgrounds now getting into the third generation of those migrants who made our community their home. And I love living in a country where you have a front row seat to Australians from many backgrounds honouring their traditions while passing them down to those new generations, be those religious traditions, cultural traditions, the festivals that we all get invited to as members of Parliament that demonstrate how multiculturalism enriches Australia's lives. And we have a collective responsibility to embrace the strength of that multicultural identity. Just being ethnically diverse doesn't make us a successful multicultural society. Success comes in building an inclusive society where everyone gets a fair go, and that requires real leadership and hard work. Often I find in discussions with migrants and their representative groups about how we can make Australia more welcoming, how we can encourage more migrants to settle in rural and regional areas. The term that often comes up is the feeling that they want to feel like that they belong part of an Australian community, a town, a suburb, and the nation. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you're all here, and that's one of the reasons why you work in this space. You want to make sure that we as government deliver policies that invite new Australians to come to this country and feel like they belong. We're facing a number of challenges with our migration policy and migration-related issues. The migration system that we inherited when we came to government, as described by Martin Parkinson, was broken and in need of major reform. So we set about putting in place a migration system that was managed maturely and in the interests of the country. We've been clear about the need to bring migration levels down to a normal level and to put in place actions that help achieve that. So net overseas migration has been reduced by about 40% since its peak in 2023 and is forecast now to return to pre-pandemic levels this year. We've accomplished this by restoring integrity in the system while ensuring that it delivers the skills that we need. We're doing this not to demonise migrants or migration, but because we value the contribution migration has made to our society and our economy, and the legitimacy of the migration system and the confidence that the Australian people have in migration, and that confidence is very, very fragile, is ensuring that we have a workable system that everyone understands and that people support and abide by. We know how important it is to maintain public confidence in a system that ensures our migration settings are working in the national interest. At the same time, we're progressing an ambitious migration reform agenda, building a migration system that matches the needs of the nation and delivers for Australians and for migrants. The migration strategy that we released in December 2023 contained 44 existing and new policy commitments and areas for future reform. Importantly, we've implemented most of those reforms in the migration strategy, and some of those reforms include measures to improve the quality and integrity of international education, including genuine student measures, increased English requirements, and restricting hopping from one visa to the next, introducing a new national innovation visa to drive growth in sectors of national importance and to also promote innovation and productivity, implementing a new skills in demand visa, including a core skills pathway, targeting workplace needs, and a specialist skills pathway to drive innovation and job creation, and offering much more Pacific engagement visas to our Pacific family. International education is a great Australian success story. And of course we know that international education is Australia's largest human capital export. It's important to our economy and our society. And our government remains committed to sensibly managing the size and the shape of the international education sector and supporting sustainable growth. Under the national planning level, public universities that want more students above their allocation in 2026 will need to meet two government priorities. Firstly, increasing engagement with Southeast Asia and the provision of student accommodation to ensure both domestic and international students have access to safe and secure housing. Reforms to the strategy that we're still working on include reviews to regional migration settings and the points test, and consultation on regulating migration for lower paid workers with essential skills. The government's also delivering the immigration reforms that were outlined in the Nixon Review. The review made several recommendations on how to reform the migration advice industry. So we're looking at strengthening the registration process for registered migration agents, including better identity verification, and boosting financial penalties for the provision of unlawful immigration assistance. The review found that a number of facilitators, including scam operators and a small organised group of registered migration agents, were abusing the Australian visa system. And that was creating real victims, people being trafficked and exploited for profit. We're determined to rid the immigration sector of scam providers and people who participate in criminal activity and wreak misery on vulnerable people. A number of multi-agency efforts are currently underway to crack down on scam migration agents who've ripped off vulnerable visa applicants of more than $1.4 million as estimated by the department. There are teams right now focusing on scam agents who are providing people with unlawful protection visa advice, charging exorbitant fees, and encourage applicants to make false claims for bridging visas with work rights. In September, the government announced the size and composition of the 2025-26 migration program would be maintained at the same level of the previous year at 185,000 places. That decision follows some pretty heavy consultation with the states and territories and reflects the need, and indeed employers and unions, and reflects the need to focus on skilled migration to address skill shortages. We've recently finalised the allocations for state and territory nominated visas. Migration levels increased following the pandemic given the pent-up demand from students, working holiday makers and skilled workers. The range of actions the government's taken, combined with these temporary visa holders now departing in larger numbers, is bringing that overall level of migration down to those pre-COVID levels. For our Pacific neighbours, we're providing greater access and easier movement around the region. That's why we're providing Pacific communities with better pathways to live, work and study in Australia and across the region through Australian scholarships and skills training, the PALM scheme, Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, and the Pacific Engagement Visa. The Pacific Engagement Visa will bring up to 3,000 Pacific Islanders to Australia each year, offering access to Australian education, healthcare and jobs. And they'll join more than 30,000 PALM workers who are already working in Australian firms and sending around 1,500 Australian dollars home each month to support their families in the communities that they've come from. And what we're trying to do with that program is provide as many Pacific Islanders with the opportunity to come and work in Australia in various industries every year. Rather than having the same people come back on an annual basis, we're trying to ensure that there are new applicants that are part of the program each year. So 2025 is a significant year for migration in Australia. It's the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the Department of Immigration in Australia. In July, the government launched the Office of Multicultural Affairs, reflecting our commitment for recognising multiculturalism as a national asset. It's 50 years since the Racial Discrimination Act became law in Australia, ensuring all of us have the right to live without fear of discrimination and free from acts of intimidation and violence. And our nation will soon welcome our 1 millionth humanitarian migrant since World War II. The anniversaries and milestones are significant achievements and something to celebrate and to be enormously proud of. That said, the important reform work continues to ensure our migration system is the best that it can be. Much has been achieved already, particularly in relation to integrity, skills gaps and student migration. But there's more work to do, and we're committed to delivering those remaining elements of the action plan that's associated with the migration strategy. We're hoping to restore public trust and aligning with Australia's economic and humanitarian priorities. So I want to thank you for each and every one of you for the work that you perform, for the research that you do, the analysis that you provide, the advocacy that you do, and the policy analysis and work that you do to help build trust and confidence in the Australian migration system. It's fundamentally important to our nation's economic and social well-being, and for that, we truly thank you. Thank you to the ANU School once again, and I'm happy to take your questions. Cheers.